Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 2A and today we want to present about Malaysian Parliament. So this is all the content that we put in this video, which is introduction, YDPA, Dewan Rakyat, Dewan Negara, and also the conclusion. Today we are going to discuss about the component of Malaysian Parliament, namely YDPA, Dewan Negara, and Dewan Rakyat, and also their function and eligibility.
Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Salinda binti Mansur, 063681, and today we are from Group 2 represent to you about the Parliament of Malaysia. The Malaysian Parliament is the country's national legislature based on the Westminster system. The Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara make up the bicameral parliament. As the head of state, the Yang Beri-Pertuan Agong is the third member of parliament. The Parliament of Malaysia meets in the Malaysian Houses of Parliament in Kuala Lumpur, the country's capital. For the member of Dewan Rakyat, we call it as Member of Parliament. Meanwhile, for Dewan Negara, for the member of Dewan Negara, we call it as Senator. There are three responsibilities for the Parliament, which is the first one is enacting, and the second one modifying, and the third one is repealing laws. For your information, every 5 years or when the Yang Beri-Pertuan Agong on the suggestion of the Prime Minister dissolve Parliament, a general election is held. Suffrage is granted to registered voters aged 18 years old and above. However, voting is not required. Plus, if any member of parliament dies, resigns, or is declared ineligible to hold a seat, a by-election is called in his constituency unless the current parliament's tenure is shorter than 2 years, in which case this seat is simply left vacant until the next general election. The minister or his deputy is also formally submits it to a vote for a proposal at the third reading. In most circumstances, a 2 or 3 majority is required to pass a measure, but in other cases, a simple majority is sufficient. If the measure passes, it will be sent to the Dewan Negara, where the 3 readings will be repeated. The Dewan Negara has choice to not to choose to pass the law, but they simply delays it for a month or in some situations a year. Once that time period has gone, the measure is regarded to have been passed by the House. According to Malaysia's constitution, the government is responsible to Parliament. The independence of Malaysian Parliament, on the other hand, has sparked considerable debate, with many seeing it as little more than a rubber stamp for the executive branch actions. That's all from me. For the a little of information about the introduction of Parliament in Malaysia. Now I will pass it to the next presenter.
Thank you to Linda for the introduction. Now, I will continue with the first main points of our discussion today, which is the eligibility and the functions of YDPA. YDPA, or Yang Beri-Pertuan Agong, was elected by the 9 rulers of the Malay states in Malaysia for 5-year term formally. He may not merely stand for the election by himself, until all the rulers of the other states have also stood for the election of the YDPA as scheduled. if there is any vacancy in the seats of the YDPA, but the reasons of pass away, apply for resignation, or maybe a majority vote of the rulers should deposited towards him, the Conference of the Rulers or COR will play their role to sit for the election to elect a new YDPA as the previous YDPA had expired. He needs to follow the term that has been fixed since the first YDPA was elected, who is Tuanku Abdul Rahman, who was elected by the Conference of the Rulers once upon a time. The order of the seniority of the states since the first cycle of YDPA from 1957 until to 1994 must be followed by all the eligible of the rulers in order to elect a new YDPA. It starts with the states of Negeri Sembilan, followed by Selangor, Perlis, Terengganu, Kedah, Kelantan, Pahang, Johor, and Perak. After the cycle has been done, it will be repeated by the rulers whose turn is first. So, let us move to the next point. In order to become a YDPA, there are 3 qualifications to fulfill, which are: first, only a ruler may be elected to be a YDPA. In other words, the citizens are not allowed and of course prohibited. Second, nobody is responsible for voting the election of YDPA except all the rulers from each state in Malaysia. And the last qualification, which is the third qualification to become YDPA, is the ruler will not be eligible for the election of YDPA if the ruler is a minor. There are 5 functions of YDPA that we must know. Before we go further, we need to know that YDPA or Yang di-Pertuan Agong covers the 3 branches of the government, which is legislative, judiciary, and executive. Alright, let us move to the first function of YDPA. First function of YDPA is he was performed to be the head of Islam in the state ruled by the governors, which are Penang, Melaka, Sabah, and Sarawak. Also, for the 3 federal territories, which are Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, and Labuan, as well as in his own states. The second function of the YDPA is he was being a constitutional monarch. Firstly, the powers of the YDPA are exercised on the advice of the members of cabinet or by the minister, like in the situation to proclaim the emergency or darurat. Secondly, he can get the suggestions from the general authority of the cabinet, conference of the rulers or COR, from the discretionary powers or any other institutions. For what? To make sure the administrations of this country Malaysia smooth. The third function of YDPA is he has the discretionary powers in order to appoint the Prime Minister. In this case, he will command the majority's confidence of the Dewan Rakyat if no party has won a majority vote, and he may dissolve the parliament anytime he wants. The fourth functions of YDPA that we need to know is he has the power to appoint the senators and the state's governors. In this country, Malaysia right now, we have 44 members of the Dewan Negara or Malaysia Senate, and we have governors or Yang di-Pertuan Negeri at the states of Sabah, Sarawak, Penang, and Melaka. Lastly, the fifth functions of YDPA is according to Article 41 of the Federal Constitution. He was known as the Commander-in-Chief of the Federation's Armed Force. In other words, he is the highest ranking officer in the military chains of command. Alright, as we all know, Nowadays, in our country, Yang di-Pertuan Agong is ke bawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia serta paduka baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah Ibni Almarhum Sultan Haji Ahmad Shah Al-Musta'in Billah. Daulat Tuanku.
Thank you, Fala, for the good explanation on YDPA. The next is function of Dewan Negara. Dewan Negara is responsible for overseeing legislative action by summoning session, organizing debates, allocating speaking time, and determining the admissibility of petition, question, bill, and amendment. The next point is, within the context of the standing order, Dewan Negara can open and close public sitting, as well as suspend sitting for limited interval, ensuring conformity with the provision of the Constitution and standing order. The next point is, they make announcement about the Senate taking disciplinary action in the event of an interruption, attempting to establish the order in which adjustments are taken up, and selecting which provisions are to be debated. The last point is, Dewan Negara also calling for a vote, deciding what is to be done, verifying the voting procedure, and cancelling a vote in the event of irregularities, and checking the quorum. Let's move to the next point, the eligibility of Dewan Negara. The first one is, candidate for Dewan Negara may be presented by a third party who is already a senator, and they must be sponsored by another senator. The first one is, subject to clause 4, the Senate should be constituted of the following elected and appointed members. So, according to the 7th schedule, 2 members are elected from each state. The second one is, Yang di-Pertuan Agong names 2 members from the Federal Territory of Kuala Lumpur, 1 from the Federal Territory of Labuan, and 1 from the Federal Territory of Putrajaya. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong names 40 members. The next point is, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall appoint members who, in his opinion, have rendered excellent public service or achieved excellence in the profession, trade, industry, agriculture, cultural activity, or social service, or who represent racial minorities or are capable of representing indigenous people interests. The next point is, a senator's tenure of office shall be 3 years, and this time shall not be changed by the dissolution of the parliament. The fourth and last point, a senator may not serve in the Senate for more than 2 terms, whether consecutive or not.
Thank you, Afza, for the description of the Dewan Negara. Now it's my turn to tell you about the Dewan Rakyat. Dewan Rakyat, or House Representative, is the lower house of the Federal Legislature of Malaysia. The powers are established by Article 44 of the Constitution Malaysia. The Dewan Rakyat sits in the House of Parliament in Kuala Lumpur, along with Dewan Negara, the upper house. Dewan Rakyat is known as the lower house after Dewan Negara. Next, the House of Representatives is the body that formulated law for the country, initiates and make laws, but to become a law, the proposal must receive the approval of both houses of Parliament. Not only that, it also provides responsible government. The House of Representatives, or Dewan Rakyat, also represents the interests of people in their electorates and examine issues in the committees.
Customarily, a bill originates in the Dewan Rakyat. Once approved, it is tabled in the Dewan Negara for another debate. After that, the bill has to be approved before being presented to Yang di-Pertuan Agong for its consent. Moreover, this house shall consist of 222 elected members representing parliamentary constituency. House of Representatives also the committee advises Yang di-Pertua on all matters related to all conveniences, services and privileges of the council. The committee does not have the power to summon anyone to be present before it or to request for the letters except when given the powers by the council to do so. For your information, based on what I have told you, is the rule of the House Representative or Dewan Rakyat. Do you know how and when they make election? I have the answer to the question. To be eligible as a member, first, the person must be a Malaysian citizen. Second, be not less than 21 years old. Third, be of sound mind. And the most important, never declare bankrupt. And the last is, not at the same time be a member of both House of Representatives and the Senate. A general election is had every 5 years to elect members of the House of Representatives. Parties with the most votes can form a government to rule the country. Before taking his seats in the House of Representatives, must take the prescribed vote before the Speaker. By the oath, the member swear or affirm that they will faithfully discharge their duty as members to the best of their ability.
So to conclude all the presentation by all my representatives, Dewan Negara is responsible for reviewing legislation enacted by the lower house, the Dewan Rakyat. Before being delivered to the King for royal assent, all measures must be passed by Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara are called as the Senate. The Dewan Negara, like the Dewan Rakyat, meets in the Kuala Lumpur in the Malaysian Houses of Parliament. The Dewan Negara was originally intended to operate as a check on the Dewan Rakyat and reflect the interests of the individual states. However, the original constitution, which provided for a majority of state-elected senators, has since been changed to make the vast majority of senators appointed by the king. The Dewan Negara has the power to originate legislation with the exception of financial and fiscal affairs, which is a Westminster-style regulation. It may also change the law as long as it does not affect financial problems. So, meanwhile for Dewan Rakyat, the Dewan Rakyat is the lower chamber of Malaysia's bicameral parliament, which serves as the country's federal legislature. In Article 44 of Malaysia's constitution, established the chamber and its power. The Dewan Rakyat, along with the Dewan Negara, the upper chamber sits in the Houses of Parliament in Kuala Lumpur. Members of the Dewan Rakyat retain their seats until the Dewan Rakyat is dissolved, which take place 5 years following an election. The Dewan Rakyat has far more power in practice, and the Dewan Negara rarely rejects bills passed by Dewan Rakyat. And the Dewan Rakyat can bypass the Dewan Negara if it refuses to pass a specific law twice, with at least 1 year between each time. The Dewan Rakyat is the only authority over the cabinet, and the Prime Minister's primary responsibility is to keep the lower house support. So, Member of Parliament have parliamentary privilege which allows them to speak freely on any issue outside of Parliament without danger of being censured. The only body that can censure and member Parliament is the House Committee on Privilege. That's all from me, and thank you.